Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this executive meeting on the 27th of January. Members, we need to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Is everybody content with the minutes of the last meeting? Yep, thank you. Okay. I do not have any urgent business to bring forward. I do have apologies from Councillor Hawkins, who in fact is on leave at the moment. Division of the agenda. The agenda will be divided when we get to item 13 at the end of the proceedings. Members, do I have any declarations of interest? No? Just for the information of other members watching online, there is only the executive in the room this morning. We don't have anybody else with us, and that's why I'm not asking anybody else for declarations of interest. I don't have any public questions. So we're now on to the agenda, and I'd like to inform members that I'm going to take the housing crisis update, which is agenda item 8, before the draft revenue and capital budget proposals, agenda item 7. The reason for that will become clear when we get onto the agenda item. But first we'll look at the forward plan, which is agenda item 6.
Microphone, please.
Microphone, please. Yes, I'm sorry, I was just getting onto the right item, so I turned it off. You can hear me again now, can't you? Members, do you have any questions on the forward plan? Executive members first. No? Keith, Councillor Baldry.
Thank you, Leader. Not a question, just, well, it is a question. You will see on the 3rd of March, options for garden waste service are coming up at that meeting. Just to update and ask Mr. Molyneux a question, we were promised by FCC a plan for restoring the garden waste service by the end of January. The end of January is almost upon us. Have we heard from them, Mr. Molyneux?
Through you, Chair, if that's okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Baldry. Yes, I can confirm that I had a conversation with FCC this morning, and they are due to deliver us a plan, which I think we should get by Monday at the latest. And I know members of the executive, myself and the chief executive, will be meeting with FCC in the middle of the week to discuss that plan.
No further questions? So we'll move on to agenda item 8, which is the housing crisis update report. Members, you'll be aware that we are having a housing update every month now because of the housing crisis. And the executive summary at 1.2 sets out what is in this report. Property purchases under the Housing First funding programme, I think that's fairly self-evident. We have managed to purchase one property so far, and the timetable is being extended because I think that the government recognise that it's a difficult period in the housing market in a lot of places over the country, and so extra time is being given for purchasing these properties. But we have purchased a flat at Sherford for homeless accommodation. The homeless strategy, the revised version of this, draft revised version, is attached at the end of the agenda item, and we should be seeking approval for this to go out to consultation. The annual rough sleep account is in the report, and the details for the outreach worker, who is now going to be included in the base budget and will have a permanent post. An update on St Anne's Chapel housing scheme, which is progressing well, and they hope to start on site in the spring. An update on the SHDC-owned brownfield site at Rope Walk in Kingsbridge, and you can see we're progressing that and still talking to the town council. Mr. Molyneux, can you update us on what's happening with the Town Council recently? Have there been any meetings?
Thank you, Chair. We have had a meeting with the Town Council. It was just before Christmas. We've looked at one of the delivery options for housing around a community land trust, and we've committed to go back to the Town Council with a options appraisal of the different options and what we believe as the District Council would be the right option to progress housing quickly on that site. So that's the current position. We're in the process of drafting that options appraisal for the council to present to the Town Council.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Right, the remainder of the report is about the new schemes completed in the last quarter. So I don't think there's anything terribly difficult in this report. What I would like to bring your attention to is paragraph 234 about the changes in shared ownership, which are coming in on the 1st of April. Now, I've asked for these to be circulated in the bulletin at the end of the week, but as part of the initiative to help more people into affordable housing and to make better use of our stock, I thought it might be a good idea if we set aside a portion of the money we're going to put into the affordable housing reserve towards a new initiative to help people moving out of socially rented housing into shared ownership, to help them with the deposit. Now, the scheme, it's because we're committed to tackling the housing crisis, and we recognise that one of the best tools at our disposal is to make the best use of existing stock. We recognise the changes to shared ownership that will come into force on the 1st of April, which principally shift the repair liability to the registered providers and reduce the share purchase requirement, which is down from 30% to as little as 10%. To coincide with the scheme improvements, the Council wishes to play a part in making this type of home ownership more accessible. Therefore, I'm recommending to the Executive that a sum of £60,000 be allocated from the £407,000 of the new homes bonus funding being allocated to an affordable housing earmarked reserve to pilot a scheme that will provide a free grant towards the deposit needed to access shared ownership accommodation for existing social housing tenants. What this should do, as well as offering practical help into home ownership, is to create much needed vacancies in the existing social housing stock. So this will help two sets of people at the same time and can be, if you like, compared to the scheme that we've already got running to help people downsize at the other end of the market. So we help to pay their expenses when they downsize in order to free up family accommodation. This is what this is all about. So there will be a consequent amendment to the budget recommendation 4, which we'll get onto when we get to the budget item, and I'll read that out then. So having announced that, can I ask, I suppose we probably ought to make an extra recommendation in this paper as well regarding this, so that we create an affordable housing earmark, a one-off contribution from the proposed new homes bonus grant allocation of £407,000, £557 of £60,000 to be allocated to what we're going to call the step-on deposit scheme pilot. While we're discussing that, can you make sense out of that for me? Thank you. Sorry about this. Sorry, this is rather a late amendment, which is why we're struggling a bit with the wording. So first of all, any questions on this? You'll second that. Thank you very much. Any questions on this? Members? No? Oh, yes, Councillor Baldry.
Yes. Can you tell, I don't know if you're able to, at this late stage, to tell us a bit more about this. You described it as a free grant. There's no such thing as a free grant. What exactly does that mean? What are the repayment arrangements going to be? And any more detail that you can give? Thank you, Leader.
Details will follow. But what I can say, Councillor Baldry, is that this is like the up to £5,000 grant for people to downsize. This will be a grant and not a loan. And it is only to help with the amount of the deposit. So if the deposit, so whatever the deposit is, it will not, with a maximum ceiling of £5,000, just like there's a ceiling on the downsizing budget. So there isn't, we shall be able to help a number of families with this grant. In that case, I'm going to Councillor Sweet. Sorry, I didn't. Yes, should look at the screen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's okay. Councillor Baldry has pretty much asked my question, and you've pretty much answered it. So just look forward to more news on that. It sounds really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sweet. Right, so we'll move the recommendations, including the extra one. Are you able to get something up on the screen for the extra recommendation? There's a slight pause while Darryl gets the recommendation up on the screen for everybody to see. So at this stage, we're just seeking support for this recommendation, which is now on the screen. The first part of the recommendation is for noting, and the second part is to approve the draft homeless strategy to go out to public consultation. And the third part is now this new recommendation, which will come up again as an altered amendment in the budget recommendations. Sorry, as an amendment in the budget recommendations. Right, members of the executive, any comments on this? Any further comments? Councillor Baldry.
Sorry, Leader. Just a couple of points on the paper, which I think is an excellent paper. I can say that. A couple of points that came out and struck me. I know we've only got a couple of rough sleepers in the South Hams, but the fact is that their average life expectancy is only 47 compared with the national general population average of 77. And I think that's just worth underlining. And the other point I was going to draw attention to is on page 84, where the increase in house prices in South Hams is gone up 25% since September 2016. Is now at £440,000, compared with an increase in average salaries of only 9%. I think that just underlines what sort of a crisis we've got, that people we want to do jobs in the South Hams cannot afford to live here. And that's why I welcome the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baldry, for that support. Councillor Hopwood, you wanted to ask a question?
I did, Chairman. Just
make a comment.
Out of the two rough sleepers that you identified in the district, are they rough sleepers through choice?
Can you hear me? Sorry,
yes.
I've not used these yet. That's rough sleeping by choice is never a choice. People think that they haven't got no doors open to them because they've, for whatever reason, lost accommodation. The private landlords won't let to them, so they've entrenched themselves into that behaviour. Through the work that Jill Evans, our rough sleeping outreach worker, does, she is very persistent. She keeps on with them. You know, the door is never closed on that. So we will, and COVID was a real door opener to some of that. Some of our entrenched rough sleepers who had never looked to come in before came in as a result of the Everybody In initiative. So we just keep on, and we never close that door so that they can come back if they want. But some of these entrenched, ingrained behaviours take years to unpick, sadly.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Blake. Right, so are there any more comments? I'd really like to thank the housing team and the assets team and everybody who's been involved in all this work for doing everything they're doing, because it is quite a lot of work and it's moving forward really well. We're not going to make a step change, but we are nibbling away at the problem, and we're going to make an incremental change at least. So I'm really pleased that's happening. So shall we vote on the recommendations on the screen, everybody?
That's unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So now we'll move back to the draft revenue and capital budgets, agenda item 7. So members, you've seen this before. You've seen it again when it went to the Joint Overview and Scrutiny and Development Management Committee, and now it's before us again. We have the amended recommendation at 4 to take account of the housing item that we've just passed. I'd like to say a word on the unearmarked reserves at paragraph 7.6 and 7.7. It is, as it says in the report, the Section 151 officer's job to recommend a minimum level of unearmarked reserves. And here we also have the Section 151 officer's recommendation on the operating level, which she recommends to be £500,000 above the minimum operating level at 2 million. I think that is a sensible recommendation. And if you like, we should look on it as our available overdraft. I think that's what it really is. And it is prudent to maintain unearmarked reserves at that level. As far as reserves in general, I think the recommendations in the paper, again, are very prudent. The future of local government financing is very uncertain and unsure. We don't know what's going to happen with the reset of business rates. We don't know at all what the 3-year settlement's going to be. We don't know what's going to replace New Homes bonus. In fact, there are so many things we don't know about that we need to have plenty of money in reserve, because we may need to draw on that to get us over the difficulties of the first few years after the business rate reset. So we need this cushion to fall back on. And I'd also like to bring to members' attention, members of the executive's attention, that we need to take a decision on the recommendations that have been put forward to us by the Joint Overview and Scrutiny and Development Management Committee that appear at Appendix F at the end of this report. So I'll open it up to questions first. Members of the executive, do you have any questions? Councillor Baldry.
Is it a question? Yeah, it is a question on the new homes bonus. When it first came in, and it is a bonus, and it is very welcome to the value of South Hams and helps our budget enormously. But are we able, in some way, the new homes bonus is there because of the increased costs of infrastructure in areas where they have the large developments. I have always favoured the idea that some of it doesn't all just go into general South Hams coffers, that some of it should be spent in those areas where they have the largest increase in the number of developments. I mean, for example, Walwell is expected to get a large increase, and it seems to me only reasonable in that case that some of the new homes bonus is directed towards those places which have the largest developments. Are we able to do that?
Councillor Baldry, I can answer that by saying that the Section 106 contributions are designed to help where those developments have been. Councils have always, to an extent, been rewarded for developing, because before New Homes Bonus, there was a payment, and I can't remember its name, but I don't know whether Mrs. Buckle can help us out. What was the payment we used to get?
Chairman, it was the planning delivery grant.
That's right. Which, as I recall, was a bit opaque, because you never really knew how much you were going to get, and it didn't particularly relate to the number of properties you built. So I think New Homes Bonus has been a much fairer system, because it does directly relate to the increase in the number of properties, although that's been chipped away at a bit by having the 0.4 increase deducted from it. But so it is a grant to the authority, and the Section 106 agreement and the contributions that are made through that are what goes directly into the area where the development is being made.
Thank you, Leader. I hear what you say. I'm still ambiguous. It is called a New Homes Bonus. The theory of the New Homes Bonus is it is to compensate for additional dwellings being built in the district. And surely those additional dwellings are going to fall in certain areas, and other areas are going to get away getting the benefit of the New Homes Bonus through the general South Hams budget, but don't actually incur any of the strategic costs.
Well, I think probably where I disagree with you is that you say it's to compensate. I would actually say it's to reward, and I think the reward is the word the government uses. So it is a payment to the local authority rather than specifically to the areas that have provided the development. We can agree to disagree, but it is, and it's probably going to change anyway. So let's see what we get instead. So are there any questions coming from the floor? I can't see anything on the screen coming in. In that case, I'll move the recommendations as set out in the report, 1 to 10, with the amendment at number 4, which is in red on the screen. And I suppose that next we had better look at Appendix F, which has the recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, before we move into discussion of the main budget.
I'll second again.
We'll second one, so we'll propose at the moment 1 to 12, and then move on to Appendix F. Right, so everybody, Appendix F and the recommendations appear at page 56. There are 2 recommendations that have been made. Do I have any questions on those 2 recommendations? They're at the bottom of page 56. If not, I'm going to say a couple of words about them, if I may, and I'll take comments after that.
Sorry, I'm probably confused, old man.
Are you on a page?
I can see 3 recommendations, 1, 2 and 3.
The third one are the following 10 proposals, which are they are the budget proposals. That did they have 1 to 12 at 1 to 10? It's 1 to 10, right? So it's 1 to 10 that were considered by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Of the Overview and Scrutiny recommendations, I recognise what recommendation 1 is trying to achieve, but I would submit that that is a policy recommendation and not a budget recommendation, because the money is set aside for all the programmes that we need to carry out. And so I would suggest that that isn't suitable to be a budget recommendation. Now, I'm happy to take advice on this. Perhaps I could ask Mr. Bates to comment on that.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think you're absolutely correct. I mean, the council has been clear about its policy intentions in this area. Those are absolutely clear through the decisions of council, through the decisions of the executive that have been recommended to council. So I don't think there's any need particularly to add to that in terms of the recommendation there. Thank you, Chairman.
And the second recommendation, to move money from the Business Retention Reserve into the Affordable Housing Reserve and the Climate Change and Biodiversity Reserve. Now, what I want to say on this is that I have a deal of sympathy with the what is behind this, but I would suggest in the case of the Climate Change and Biodiversity Reserve, there is still plenty of money in that reserve that is unspent. And as to the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund, moving £1 million into that reserve is not going to get any more houses built, but there is money in that reserve. And if we need any more money for any projects, it can always be wired across, but it is more flexible to Mrs. Buckle and the finance team in the Business Retention Reserve, should it be needed for other things, for instance, next year. I would also suggest that as far as affordable housing goes, if any projects actually get off the ground, it would be the council's project probably to borrow money to build those houses, which is then paid back as the houses are completed and sold either to a registered provider, or if they're rented, that the rent would go on paying the loan off. Mrs. Buckle, do you want to comment on that at all?
Only to say, Chairman, that obviously council has already approved the St Anne's project, and that works in exactly the way that you have described. Thank you.
Just that I agree with your comments, Leader.
Councillor Baldry, do you have a comment at all?
I was hoping to hear from Councillor Holway with his views on the climate change and biodiversity proposal, and I can't see if the chairman of ONS is here. Is he here?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm sure we will want more money for climate change and biodiversity work as time goes on, but I think at the moment we stick with what we've got, and if we need any, then we fire it across.
Thank you, Councillor Holway. Right, so we need to take a decision then on whether we're actually going to propose these two amendments or not. So can I have a proposal?
Can I propose that we do not take those forward?
Does everybody agree with that proposal, that we don't take them forward to the budget? Yeah. Okay. Right, so that's carried. I would like to thank the Joint Overview and Scrutiny and Development Management Committee for discussing the budget and putting those two proposals forward. And it's regrettable that we're not accepting them, but I think that may be a signal for future years. And it was also interesting that a lot of people on that, several people on that committee voiced the opinion that we'd had a very good budget set and that there was no need for any amendments. We can now move back to the main budget, and we've had the questions. So are there any comments to be made on the main budget?
Thank you, Leader. Can I just say at the beginning, I think we are, as a council, in a most excellent position, and I congratulate you to the council. When I see what is happening in other areas, other districts and unitaries not too far away from here, it stresses the excellent position which we find ourselves in at the moment. I have been on this council for too long, but I think this is the first year in which I have not been asked to discuss cuts in our expenditure and projects for cuts. So it is really, I think, a first-rate position, and it is a good position to be in. and whoever takes control of this council after the next election are inheriting an excellent position. I have, however, I'm not going to vote for the recommendations. I'll say the reasons now. That if you are looking first at recommendation Roman 10, which is about reserves, I think the reserves of this council are more than adequate at 1.5 million. I would like to see them less. This is money which we have taken from hard-pressed residents in the South Hams and is now in our coffers. The suggestion that we should have an operating level of £2 million is brand new to me. It is not something I've come across before. And if you look at paragraph 7.5, that talks about 1.5 million. I think this is public money which we have taken on board, and it is all very well to give us a rosy glow looking at our bank balance and saying we are protected from other things which might happen. It is not the real world, Leader, and I think the level of reserves is a accounting thing to make people feel that we are very well off. It is money I would much rather see spent for the benefit of residents, which then links into what I'm going to say about the council tax increase proposed, Roman 1 at the top. I cannot vote for this yet again. We are going for the maximum at 2.85% at the top end. People in this district and in this country are facing a real financial crisis coming up. And yet again, we are agreeing to the government's bidding and putting up our council tax to cover the lack of funding from government. Government find this a useful weapon in order to save doing it from general taxation, paying for things through general taxation. I am sure I will be told by officers it doesn't really matter because we are only but a small cog in the general increase in council tax, and that in particular the county council and the police authority are the major people. That as maybe, I am not the county councillor, I'm not on the police authority. This is my opportunity to make the point that continually year on year increase in council tax is not acceptable. It is an unfair tax. It is based on the value of property back in 1991 and related to new properties as they come on stream. It does not relate to people's ability to pay. And I'm sick and tired, Leader, of this unfair system continuing, and my contribution to it will be that I cannot vote for this, even though we are only 8 or 9% of the total of council tax paid by people across the district. It is not acceptable to me. Thank you.
Councillor Baldry, thank you for your contribution. I would echo that I think we are in a very good financial position, for which we need to thank our finance team for doing an excellent job. I think I hear what you say about the increases, and I think a lot of us would share your opinion on that. But I think the problem is that we are caught in a bind of the base budget and the core spending power, because if we get behind on the core spending power, the government will not forgive us and will forever underpay us in future. Councillor Bastone, you'd like to make a comment on this, wouldn't you?
Yeah, Councillor Baldry was really going well until he got to the reserves. I thought, oh, good, he's on board with us this year. But we got to the reserves and he, prior to that, he'd said we had put ourselves in a good position. And why had we put ourselves in a good position? Because we've been prudent down the years, you know. And that's why we are in this good position compared to other councils up and down the country. And then he got on to the small increase in council tax. We're talking about 10p a week. I can't believe that is going to send anybody into great debt to pay an extra 10p a week, but they all. I've answered Councillor Baldry, but I'll leave others to make their statement.
Councillor Hopwood.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairman. I echo what Councillor Bastone said. I listened to Councillor Baldwin and thought exactly the same. He is recognising that we are a prudent council and we have kept the council finances in extremely good shape. And that is what we are here for as an administration. So I'm glad you recognise that, Councillor Baldwin. I'm glad you noted it. I too sort of have reservations about a £2 million reserve until I look at paragraph 2.6 and the cumulative budget gap for 24-25 is £761,000. That's without knowing of any other cuts we may have in between. So that means that by the end of 2025, we will be £1.2 million light. I think I've read that right. And that's a colossal figure. That takes us well below the agreed contribution, which we think should that our 151 officer recommends and actually is quite insistent, in fact, very insistent, that we keep it above 1.5 million, and that's what we do as a council. And as Councillor Bastone has said, there are councils around this district. I won't name them, I'm sure I've got them right in my head, but knowing my memory, I've got them wrong. But there are councils within the district, within the Devon, that are really facing financial hardship, and in a minute we are going to be listening to those councils and listening to how they are going to bail themselves out of the position they're in, because they do not have the reserves to help themselves. And then what happens to them? They lose complete control of all their finance and everything, and the government come in and control their budget, and God help them. So I'm glad that you recognise, Councillor Baldry, that we are a healthy council, and long may it continue past next year. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hotwood. Councillor Holway.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, my crystal ball's a little bit cloudy. I think we're headed for stormy waters, and we've got to remember that our government is going to be trying to refill its coffers after COVID, and I see there being a bit of a squeeze as we go into the future, and I think we've got to be ready for it. You're right, we're not here to gather funds and keep them, but then again, I'm an accountant, so I would want to be prudent, and I think we owe it to our residents and to our officers to keep this business going. And I think that's vitally important, because we're not serving them at all if we let it all go to the four winds. And so I really do support the budget as is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holway. Yes, I think that we really do need to be prudent in these times, and yet this council is doing a tremendous amount of work. We have a very ambitious capital programme, and we have a very ambitious corporate strategy now, Better Lives for All, and we are doing, the council is very busy doing things for its residents to improve their lives. So I really feel that they're getting pretty good value for money from the council tax they're paying and all the services we're providing, and the improving services we're providing. Are there any more questions? Are there any questions from the floor on the budget? Can't see anything coming up. In which case, we will move to the 12 recommendations in the report, which includes the community composting initiative that was included in the joint overview and scrutiny and Development Management Committee report. Members, are you in favour of the recommendations?
That's 4 in favour of the 12 recommendations, Leader.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. White. One against.
Oh, 1 against. Thank you.
So we move on to item 3, which is the, it isn't item 3, it's item 9, quarter 3, integrated performance management report. Now, and we have Mr. Hawke coming in to be present for this report. So this is a new report which is designed to update members and indeed the public on how we're getting on with corporate strategy, Better Lives for All. It is in a new format, and maybe Mr. Hawke would just like to walk us through the format so that members are quite clear on what's appearing where and why. And then the way we're going to take it is we'll have questions, we'll move the recommendation, and then each member of the executive is going to present their part of the report. The recommendation is only for noting, but Mr. Hawke, would you like to walk us through the format of the report, please?
Thank you, Leader. I can do. So, as the Leader has already said, this report is in a new format. It's an improvement on our previous performance management reporting processes, and a new report coming forward to the executive. In terms of the structure of the document, it considers the performance by theme for each of the corporate strategy priorities, the programme expenditure, and important to say that's different. So what we're not doing in this report is doing a budget review. It's just expenditure against items specifically identified within the Better Lives for All programme. It will include key operational performance indicators in future. As members will know, currently we do report those to overview and scrutiny on a 6-monthly basis. But what we will be doing is bringing forward an overview of our key performance to executive on a quarterly basis, and that will show in the next quarter's report. We're currently reviewing our KPIs just to ensure that they're more customer focused and that the performance is monitored based on what's important to our customers. And finally, a summary of the key strategic risks for the council. So again, it doesn't set out the complete strategic risk register, which is of course considered by our audit committee on a 6-monthly basis, but it does pick out those big, high-level red risks. So the ones that we really need to focus on, and the ones that actually the senior leadership team and the executive are considering on a regular basis and trying to reduce those risk scores. So that's the overall format of the document. It is intended to be easy to read so that a member of the public, if they're interested in what we're doing for a particular theme, can pick it up and read it, should they so wish. In terms of each of the theme pages, members will note that we've tried to categorise each specific action within the Better Lives for All plan in terms of whether it's on track, whether it's slightly off track, but a plan is in place, so it's being managed by the service, whether there is a significant risk that we're not going to be able to deliver the project, or whether it's not yet due to commence. I think that's probably enough for now, Leader. Happy to pass back.
Thank you very much. Right, so as explained, the KPIs will be more prominent in the next report. And it is just for noting. Do we have any questions before we move on to discussion? Councillor Bastian?
I wanted to make a comment, if I could.
Yeah, well, we'll go into the comments because I don't think there are any questions. So yes, please do.
I just wanted to comment that it's a beautifully put together report. I think it gives us all the information we need, and we're going to get this on a regular basis, which I appreciate. I'd like to thank Mr. Hawke and the SLT for coming up with this, because I think it is going to keep us all members very informed as to what's going on.
I agree, Councillor Bastow, and the public as well, as Mr. Hawke has said. So yes, thank you very much for coming up with this scheme. I think it's much better than similar reporting we've had in the past, and I think it will keep all members informed.
Could I ask a question about the KPIs? They always used to go to ONS. Will that? But you were saying that it's going to come to us here. Is that right?
That is correct. I've asked them to come to us so that we know what's going on. Overview and scrutiny can look at them because they will be looking at each part of the corporate strategy in turn on their agenda, and that will be their time to look at the KPIs. I hope that's agreeable to you.
As long as ONS get their 10 I think it's important because we're involved in this quite heavily at executive, and I think ONS should have that opportunity to really scrutinise it as we're going along.
Yes, I think the Chief Executive would like to put a few more words to that.
Thanks very much, Chair. Yes, it's very much about how the executive and ONS work together. You remember the conversations you all had over the last year about making sure we have an integrated approach. So therefore, it's absolutely pertinent that you as the executive, which are driving forward the delivery of this plan, has a view on the key KPIs, in particular the ones around impact on customer service, customer care. But of course, ONS as a committee is holding you to account. They'll be looking at your thematic delivery plans on a regular basis, and as part of that they will drill down into a set of KPIs relevant to those. So actually both executive and ONS play a really key part in looking at this collectively. I hope that helps, Chair.
Could I just add to that? Yes, that's all very well, ONS and executive really scrutinising this, and ONS sort of scrutinising what the executive needs to be doing, but they also need to be scrutinising the officers on this. You missed that bit out.
Oh, please do, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Bastow. And I have no doubt whatsoever that the officers will be held well and truly to account by ONS and indeed by the executive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right. So, in turn then, I think we're probably ready for each member to present their part or to comment on their part of the report. Councillor Holway, you happen to have the first page, so I'm going to call on you first. Are you on the right page?
Yeah, you're not doing any. That's on. Okay. Yeah. Oh dear. Well, it's all a bit small print, and my memory's shot. But as you know, we are planting lots of trees. 300 this year and 300 next year under the Urban Tree Challenge Fund project, and we will be joining in the Queen's Green Canopy scheme and reporting everything so that can all be coordinated, as it were, and collated, sorry, wrong word, collated centrally. We have carried out a consultation with regard to how we look after our green areas. We've had a very good response. Over 1,000 responses and somewhere around the 90% support. So that's really good. And we'll come to that later in this meeting. We are a little bit behind on some of the charging points. I think this is inevitable because we're going to be waiting on Western Power and Distribution, and I think Western Power and Distribution will end up having an awful lot more problems than any of us know, and CEGB and everyone else. I think the demands on the electrical circuit will be phenomenal, but we'll see. Hopefully we can get this done. I will try and find out if there's any profiling been done with regard to the increase in electric vehicles. There's certainly, I think they're starting to sell more electric vehicles than diesel ones now. So it would be good to know how the numbers are expected to increase, and then to see whether our capability of providing charging points hits the same profile. Anyway, I'm not much more to add unless anyone's any questions. I'm sure Mr. Williams is on Teams and will be able to provide some technical support if required.
Well, you did come before overview and scrutiny, didn't you? So you've had your overview and scrutiny sessions. So
Yeah.
I don't know whether members have got any questions or comments on Councillor Holway's section of this. Thank you very much for putting that forward. No? In which case we'll move on to the next section, which is Councillor Hawkins' session. Now, he is in fact on leave at the moment, but Councillor Bastone has agreed to do a short kind of resume of what's going on there. Councillor Bastone, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. Our communities and the voluntary sector all continue to work together on supporting each other through the ongoing pandemic. While our teams continue to support this effort, I am pleased that we have continued to make good progress in delivering our plans for 2021-22, including a continuing increase in leisure centre participation, and that is currently 85% usage levels, which is above the national level. Discussions commenced with Southam CVS about how we may be able to work together with increased impact to our communities in the future. Work is continuing on the building of the Dartmouth Health and Wellbeing Hub. We began the scoping of the rural poverty pilot using the Devon Joint Strategic Needs Assessment as the starting point. We have developed a new draft playing pitch strategy and consulted with our residents and community groups, with the results being considered in January 2022. As far as the actions, reducing health inequalities and rural poverty, we have 4 actions and we're on track with those. Improving the open space and sport and recreation, we had 1 action there and that is on track. And the 3rd item was to support the voluntary sector. We've got 1 action and we have that is on track. As far as risks are concerned, while our leisure centre provision has seen a continuing increase in participation levels, there is a risk that current COVID-19 impacts result in a reduction in participation over the coming months. We'll continue to work with our provider to monitor these impacts. An update report from Fusion Leisure will be considered at the executive in March. I could go on further, but do you want me to mention what our tasks will be for the next quarter? Would you like me to do that? Yeah, right. Over the next quarter, we are developing plans for that rural poverty pilot with partners. We're holding a scoping session with Southam CVS and other voluntary sector groups to identify areas where the district council can support better outcomes, and that is likely to be held in February. We're launching a £50,000 one-off voluntary sector grant scheme for groups supporting health and wellbeing within the district. Okay.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bastone. Any questions from anybody on all that? And thank you for doing Councillor Hawkins' part of this. Right, no, don't appear to be any further questions. So it's on to me for homes. Now, all the actions are on track for this year so far. So delivery of local homes, that is on track. And in fact, we've had an absolute bumper quarter this quarter for delivering affordable homes. I think we will have delivered well over 50 affordable homes in the quarter, and probably several more than that when the final tally comes up. The housing needs surveys, 3 have so far been carried out. There's another 2 to go, but the 3 have been completed. We are continuing, well, we've had a success on closing the loophole for business rates on second homes. not complete yet because it won't completely start until April 23. But the fact that it's been recognised and that measures are in place is a good step forward on that. And then the bits where we're slightly behind is on the green grants for retrofitting and for fitting air source heat pumps. The problem with that is twofold. Finding the installers is a problem. And as an owner of an air source heat pump, I recognise that because it's really difficult to get competent people to service them, let alone install them. And so the government is extending the time frame on that. We've got a satisfactory number of applications, and some of the money is being spent on general installation of homes, and that is moving forward because there are people who can do that. But the actual air source heat pumps are proving to be difficult. They're difficult to source and they are difficult to install. And it's reasonably difficult to identify the right properties for them to be installed in because they are not suitable for every type of property, as those of us with them will know. So it's slightly off track, but I would say it's on track insofar as if we get an extension on the time to spend the money, then I'm sure it will get spent. But otherwise, Homes is on track, and I'm very pleased to be able to report that. Councillor Bastone, back to you for the economy, please.
Thank you, Lou. The past quarter has continued to be a very challenging period for many businesses within the district. And shortly before Christmas, government announced additional grant schemes to support those hardest hit. That said, while taking steps to ensure we can efficiently deliver these grants to businesses, we've made good progress also against our delivery plan, which included working with Plymouth and Devon councils to submit the free zone outline business case, a demonstration that we continue to commit to levelling up the regional economy. We are using EU funding, and that's the Welcome Back Fund. We have launched a My Place marketing campaign, a coordinated online print programme of vacant shop window dressing in our towns, in addition to funding radio advertising, printed media adverts and town centre banners for the Kingsbridge as part of the Christmas campaign. We have launched a community recovery grant scheme with a key focus on supporting existing business growth and development in the district. 205 applications were received and are now being assessed. As far as progress is concerned, to promote Southam's coastal and visitor economy, we had 3 actions, 2 of which are on track and 1 which is slightly off track, and I'll come on to that in a minute. We are supporting towns and businesses, 6 actions and 6 on track. And the same with strategic employment and infrastructure, 3 actions and 3 on track. Now, as far as risks are concerned, I mentioned about there was 1 slightly off track, and that is the development of a budget and marketing strategy for the area. Engagement has commenced with towns. However, the final marketing strategy is likely to require work slightly beyond the 31st of March target date, and it is important we spend the time to develop that with our partners. The processing of the government grants has taken considerable resource over the 18 months. Not using that as an excuse, but I do need to stop and congratulate all the staff involved with those grants who have worked overtime and weekends, and they've dedicated themselves to that, which they are still doing now. We are now responding to the new grants launched in response to the Omicron variant, and this could slightly slow our progress on other areas. We will look to allocate resource from a range of services to ensure these grants are processed quickly and efficiently, so support reaches those businesses that need it while continuing to deliver on our priorities. Now, our focus for the next quarter is on delivering an additional government business grants as announced in December, support the submission of full business case for the free zone, and continue to roll out the My Place campaign to encourage people to shop local. The free zone is later on the agenda, so I'll come to it then.
Thank you, Councillor Bastow. Back to me for the environment. Yes, everything for this year is on, excuse me, on track. One of the actions this year was to undertake a publicity and engagement campaign to encourage parish councils to prepare neighbourhood plans and continue assistance to active neighbourhood plan groups. It has actually been really difficult for neighbourhood plan groups to do the work they need to do to bring their plans forward during the pandemic, because it's been difficult to get out and do the field survey work and to consult as they would like to do in village halls and things like that with members of their community. So I think we recognise that, and there is more work to be done there. But I also think that we do have a very satisfactory percentage of villages that now have neighbourhood plans, and a good number sort of on the books coming forward as well. So I'm not worried about that at all. The Urban Tree Challenge Fund bid was successful, and we have money to plant trees over the next 2 years and enough money in reserve to look after those trees for at least the first 5 years. Now, that is the most critical part of a tree's life, but trees need looking after for longer than that. So the challenge will be at the end of that time to continue looking after these trees, but it is a very good start, and I'm sure that I think it was done in conjunction with Kingsbridge, wasn't it? So there will be a number of trees appearing in Kingsbridge, and I'm sure it's going to enhance the general urban, I was going to say the urban countryside, but I don't mean that at all. I mean the urban scene, which will look much better with trees. The delivery of the new harbour depot at Sorcom is going more or less according to plan. They are slightly behind on the work. This is due to having discovered things while excavating that I suppose they were and they weren't expecting, but they've discovered it because it used to be the dump where they're building. They have discovered some asbestos, which has been quite difficult to take away. The whole project, I think, is about 5 or 6 weeks behind schedule at the moment. But the important thing is that it is not going to hold up getting the boats off the car park and the car park being freed up and usable by the appointed time, which is in time for Easter. And it's a good thing that Easter's late this year, I suppose, regarding that. But it is going to mean a tremendous amount of work for the harbour people getting the boats in the water, because they're going to do that in 4 weeks instead of 6, but they've already contacted the owners. I think everything is organised and running, but the delivery of the workshop will be slightly late, but it is on a penalty on the contract, so I'm not sure how that's going to work either, but everything is under control and moving forward as it should, apart from the delay. The first iteration of the Nature Recovery Network map is completed, so that's on track, and the work has begun on the delivery of priority cycle routes, or at least work to examine which should be the priority cycle routes, and a 20-year vision for the cycle network in the South Hams. The broadband connectivity is moving forward well. As you probably all are aware, Gemma Bristow has been appointed to this, and she now has a network of local champions to help her deliver this initiative. I know that a lot of villages have engaged with this, and Airband is beginning to set up their infrastructure. And I know some of this is PD, and I know there's been some concern, I think, about telegraph poles and things appearing in various places, but I understand it is permitted development, so I think more telegraph poles may appear in connection with Airband and their cables. And the conservation area reviews, this is slightly behind schedule, but really on track, because work has begun on starting to prioritise which conservation area appraisals should be revised and which new ones should be done, and in what order. And the work is being done to appoint a new conservation officer to take this forward. I think what we've got to bear in mind is that this is being done with West Devon, and only half, and it's on a 50-50 basis, so only half the work will be in the South Hams. But we should have news of much more concrete news of the programme to bring to you next time. So that rounds up everything in the environment section, which, and I'm pleased to say, apart from the delay on the Sorcom workshop, everything is on track. So Councillor Baldry and Councillor Hotwood. I think, Councillor Hotwood, you're going to take the next section, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chairman. Work continues to ensure that we are a wholly accessible council. And even though we have been in the midst of a global pandemic for nearly 2 years, the tireless commitment of the officers of South Hams has continued on top of everything else that has been thrown at them COVID related. For instance, did you know that on the website, the general inquiry system has been modified, and this has led to 80% of the 30,000 general inquiries transactions in the quarter aborted by the customer? I believe this is purely down to the improved processes helping users find the right place to go on the website, as the signage is so much better. This means that officers save time having to review and allocate general inquiries to the right place, freeing up their time and, more importantly, improving the user experience. Having said that, officers have dealt with 16,500 website processes during the period, but their time hasn't been wasted by sifting through those inquiries that have the answers online. As I said just now, the signage has been improved. Our customer-facing IT system has enabled us to continually modify processes, enabling both residents and businesses to quickly and easily apply for COVID grants. And this is due to the way the systems have been built, ensuring that they are quickly adaptable to deal with emergency situations. We are now being contacted by other councils who have looked at our success in dealing with grants quickly and are being asked to explain what we have that they don't. I could have answered that one though. It's clear that we have the best officers looking at the best solutions for anything thrown at us IT-wise. Mike Ward, Head of IT, and Jim Davis, our Customer Improvement Manager, have been asked to put on webinars on this subject for other councils during the period. We've had over 307,000 visits to the website in this quarter. 18 months ago, the government digital accessibility score of our website was 53%. But due to the hard and continual work of our web editor, Kathy Toms, this score is now at 99%. What does this mean? Well, it's simple. Our website is better, more accessible, and an altogether more inclusive experience for our users. Focusing on the customer again, we are in the middle of undertaking a customer contact centre review to see where improvements can be made to the customer experience if they choose to phone the council instead of using the website. Again, we are looking to the customer and putting practices in place to make sure this council is accessible to everyone in the way they choose. We have implemented a new performance management and appraisal form for all staff, making sure that officers are clear in their objectives and the objectives of the council. Customer first and focus on customer needs. You will see that being digital first is slightly off track, and this is due to the new planning system go live date being pushed back from the end of January to, we think now, June, July 2022. The reason for this is that we are in the hands of the supplier to iron out the glitches before the system goes live. However, the project is still in budget, and it is better to delay a system that has been tried and tested than go live with one that we have rushed out purely to meet a deadline that still has problems. So, Chairman, I think that all told, we are becoming a more inclusive council and a more accessible council to our residents, and I see the improvements just continuing within the next 12 months. And by the end of this next council, hopefully everything will have been put in place and our customers will see a real improvement in the way we reach out to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hopwood. Does anybody have any comments or questions generally? Councillor Baldry.
It's not a comment. Councillor Hopwood mentioned Mrs. Toms. Can I also mention Mrs. Toms? Not directly related to this, but she is a good example of an officer who, in their private life, engages in social media in my area, defending the council on every possible occasion, supporting our work, and sometimes has subjected herself, because of the problems we've had with FCC, to some significant disagreements on social media. But I'm just publicly, if I may say, thanking Mrs. Toms for what she has done to work to defend and to promote this council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Baldry. Well, thank you very much for everybody for presenting your part of this programme. The final part of the report details the spend to date, and I think that is as on track as it can be with all the actions we've got. The next part, the key service performance section, will be expanded for the next report. And then section 5 is the strategic risk register. And there are 2 items there which are detailed, both read at the moment: the business continuity section and what we're doing to reduce the risk. And that is all detailed in the report. And finally, the delivery of the waste and recycling service, which we know we're all working hard on. I think there are some detectable improvements coming through, and if we can start the garden waste service again in March, that will be a significant step in the right direction. But meanwhile, as members will be aware, the Waste Working Group is examining what is going on there in detail and what the solutions can be. And we've had one member update, and those will come as and when there is more to report. So, and finally, there are the scheduled updates to overview and scrutiny and audit, and when they'll come back to the executive. So you've got a kind of timetable set out at the end of the report. So that, in summary, is how the new integrated performance management report works. And our job is just to note the progress. So if everybody is happy to do that at the end of this. Do you want to say something else, Councillor Baldry?
I was only going to say about the waste and recycling service. Yes, there has been an improvement. We have kept members informed on that in the number of staff FCC have managed to recruit and to retain most of them. But we are fully aware, I am fully aware, of course, that they are not fulfilling the terms of their contract. As you have said, Leader, they are not delivering a garden waste service, and equally they are not giving the full Devon Alliance service, which was in their contract in the first place. And we are keeping, you and I are keeping their noses to it to make sure that they are aware that they cannot be complacent, because their recruitment is succeeding, but they are yet to meet the terms of their contract.
Thank you, Councillor Baldry. I would agree with your comments on that. Right, so if everybody's happy to note that report, and again, thank officers and in particular Mr. Hawke for finding such a good format for it. Everybody content to do that, and we'll move on to the next item. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. So the next item on the agenda is enhancing biodiversity on council green spaces. Councillor Holway.
Thank you, Chairman. As we touched on earlier, we had a consultation with our residents and the parish councils and the town councils. Residents are well in support. We had over 1,000 responses, which is fantastic actually for a consultation these days. And it was about 90% in support. We've asked the parishes and towns what they want and what they don't want, and they've told us, and so we're going to do our best to work around that. Now, Mr. Brooke, I'm sure, will be able to, or Mr. Secula, will be able to fill us in on the technicalities. I think I understand most of it, but if I had to explain it to you, I might have difficulty. So I would leave it to them to explain the details.
Thank you very much. Mr. Secula, would you like to tell us about the details of this? Could you confirm to us that you've received replies from all the parish and town councils now too, please?
I've certainly had contact with them all now. There's still a couple that are considering the detailed proposals this month. In a couple of cases, I've had initial contact with the clerk who's given their views, but again, they want to run it past their respective parish councillors. So I think I've got a good measure, certainly, of the ones that haven't been included within the appendix have certainly come back to me now individually. So yeah, I think it's enough to form almost a conclusion as to in which parishes we're probably going to be rolling out some of these measures, subject to decisions today. I'm assuming you don't really want me to go over too much detail in the report. I'll skim you through it, I suppose. So, as Councillor Holway said, this is really the culmination of a few reports now to executive, following the previous consultation with the community. Also, then having drawn up the detailed proposals of what changes we will be rolling out on a site-by-site basis. That's now gone out to town and parish councils, and we've heard back from them. So this report is really pulling all that information together, presenting to you the equipment that we think we need to actually cut our sites in that particular manner for biodiversity. I've also included a couple of extra sections, mainly in response to some of the questions that have been posed at previous executives where grounds maintenance has come up. So there's a section in here related to tree planting, and also a section related to chemical use or glyphosate. Again, I probably won't really run you through the detail on that, but perfectly happy to take questions.
Fine, thank you. Has anybody got any questions? Councillor Baldry.
I'm sorry, it is on a... Can I be boring for a minute and talk about paragraph 2.6, which is about closed churchyards? I'm going to talk about it and then a question comes at the end. Closed churchyards come about when the local parochial church council thinks that the graveyard is full up. It is a fairly lengthy process to close a churchyard. It requires going through government areas and ends up with the Privy Council. And if it is all approved, a closed churchyard is signed by Her Majesty, signed off. At that point, the closed churchyard is returned to the local parish council. The local parish council could continue to maintain and run that if they wish to do so. Nearly all of them take the opportunity then to pass the responsibility on to the district council in our case. Having Parish Council having said they do not wish to maintain the graveyard, and equally the parochial church council have also said they do not wish to. The question that comes to the end of it is, it says here that we're going to be consulting on a case-by-case council with ward members, quite correct, but parish and parochial church councils. My question is, they have said they do not wish to be responsible for it. Do we think they should have any say in the sort of maintenance of the churchyard and wilding, etc., or should we as a district council, now who've got the cost of running that churchyard, be the ones who take that decision?
Thank you. What is the line you're taking on this, Mr.
So, as always, I'll be completely honest on these points. The immediate line I took is that it was too complicated to include within this initial grounds maintenance review. So the reason I didn't want to apply a broad brush approach to every churchyard, and we do manage a lot of closed churchyards as has been described, is because I would have been locked into 6 months of debate on each one probably. So I thought in terms of getting to this executive, it was probably not particularly sensible use of my time. I've acknowledged that there are arrangements that have been put in place on a site-by-site basis with our grounds maintenance team, quite often in response to, you can probably imagine the level of local complaint or lobbying by a parish council or parochial council. So there's a lot of quirky arrangements in place, and I think simplifying that would be very sensible. But equally, I'm very conscious that if I oversimplify, then we are going to get a fair degree of backlash, or at least you will as local members.
Thank you. Yeah, do you want to come back, Councillor Baldry?
Very briefly, Mr. Sakula has covered it very well. The reality is, certainly in my case, I am under serious lobbying from a parochial church, no, from a parish council and from a pressure group who wish to get involved in bespoke treatment of their churchyard. That is putting work into Mr. Cropper. I like what Mr. Sakula says. My inclination will be to say, you don't want to be responsible for this, leave us to make the decisions, and we will not be able to provide you with bespoke cutting of certain areas of your churchyard and looking at the beautiful wildflowers growing elsewhere.
Thank you for that, but this is obviously for another day, so I think we need to continue this discussion because this needs to be bottomed out as part of, well, as a further part of this programme. I think Chief Executive would like to say something.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Baldry has pretty much summed up the point I was going to make, which is, by all means, we should absolutely consult town and parish councils on what our intentions are in terms of the land we manage within their areas. I mean, ultimately, of course, if they have particular views which are different to ours and they wish to take on those responsibilities themselves or pay for them, then we'd be very welcome to do that. Clearly, at the end of the day, we'll make a decision. We'll try and take account of their views where we're able to, but we have to balance that against the resources for the programme overall. Chairman, whilst I've got the floor, if I may, the other point I wanted to make, which Mr. Sakula didn't make in his introduction, although I have to say it's an excellent report, thank you very much, Rob, is the important contribution this report is making towards our corporate target, reference 2.1. We had a target to increase the biodiversity on council land. This makes a very, very significant contribution towards that, so I'd just like to thank Mr. Sakula for his plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Now, do you have any more questions from the Executive? We haven't moved the recommendations yet. Councillor Long, you've got your hand up. Is this a question or a comment?
It's a question, really, Chair. But I think it may.
Okay, please ask it. Yeah.
It is to Rob, and it's about the closed churchyards, and I understand and I agree with what has been said, but is Rob aware that there is a diocese biodiversity officer, and there are discussions going on within the diocese about churchyards and the biodiversity regimes, and I wonder whether he's had contact. If not, I can get that person to contact Rob.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Perhaps you'd like to have a dialogue with Rob Sakula by email after the meeting to sort it out, or a conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks very much for your contribution. Would you like to move the recommendations, please?
Yes, I would. You want me to read it out?
No, you can just move them.
I move the recommendation, Chair.
I'm happy to second them. Yeah, Councillor Baldry.
I'm talking a great deal. I didn't think I had anything on the agenda today, but paragraph 7.1, if I may draw your attention to. The first is just a warning note, I think, that parish and town councils have responded and favourably to the questionnaire on the whole. I think we need to be ready to respond fairly quickly should we get an adverse reaction once they start seeing the new cutting regime within their area. I think we may need to respond more quickly. But more specifically on 7.1, my hope on grounds maintenance is that we will be able to offer a service to grass cutting in particular, but looking after other areas above the areas owned by town and parish councils. I hope we will be able to offer a service to other groups, housing associations, local management companies on developments. So I'm just making the comment. Let us bear in mind this is. I hope we will be in the near future able to provide a commercially service on commercial grounds, which increases revenue into this district council in a wider area than just on town and council parish areas of land ownership.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Baldry. I'd like to make one comment, which is following on from the question I asked. I am concerned that the summary of the town and parish council comments doesn't include all the parishes yet. And I know some have still to respond. I think maybe the problem was that the question went out sort of before Christmas, and a number of parish councils, for whatever reason, didn't have a meeting in December. And so some of them haven't been able to discuss this, but I would like to see that comment list fully populated so that we have an answer from all the parishes, so that we definitely know what their wishes are on this and we're not assuming anything. So perhaps Councillor Holway, you and Rob Sekula, between you, can make sure that that happens. Is that all right?
Yeah, we can do that. I think perhaps make the point that some parishes won't have any green space and may well have decided there was no point commenting.
Well, I think that can be ascertained from the map layers, and if it is a no comment one, then it's no comment because no land, then that's fine. Yeah, and I think that's a very fair comment, but I would like to be assured that anybody who needs to comment has commented.
In fairness to Mr. Sekula, the failure to respond in my ward was nothing to do with Mr. Sekula. It was more to do with the parish clerk.
Well, there are hiccups, but some of them may need chasing. So yeah, I think you've put that very well. Thank you.
Sorry, Chairman. If Mr. Gardner's around, I've just been shut out of all the paperwork on here. Oh, I don't know if he could pop in and sort me out.
We'll get him in to help you. Any further comments on this? Because if not, we'll go back to the recommendations, which are green, for the vote. Members, are you in favour of the recommendations on the screen?
Thank you, Leader. That's unanimous for parts 1 to 4. Thank you.
The next item is it calls itself 11A. I'm not sure what 11B is, but anyway, it's the recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee working group, climate change working group. Now, these were deferred from the last executive meeting because we hadn't had a chance to discuss them properly. And I now have, as a result of a meeting with the Devon County Council, Devon Carbon Plan officers, a revised recommendation that we would like to put in place instead of recommendation A. Now, this has been circulated to members earlier this morning and is now on the screen. And I apologise for the late arrival of it. But Councillor Holway, do you want to say any more about this and why we're suggesting it should replace that recommendation?
Not an awful lot to add, Leader, except that our officers, Mr. Powell and Mr. Williams, have had the opportunity to discuss these proposals with their opposite numbers at the Devon Carbon Plan, and they've come up with these amendments.
Yes, I think probably the point to make about this, that it was considered that A was not going to be achievable. So our suggested revision for this, which I'm afraid is even longer than the original recommendations, because these recommendations are excessively long, in my view, on this particular subject. But this one is achievable and has been discussed as such, whereas it was feared that A, as it was set out, would not be achievable. That was the officer reservation on that. And I think that was also the opinion of the Devon officers as well. So I think if we're aligning ourselves with the carbon plan, it is sensible to have a recommendation that is achievable. So does anybody want to make any further comments on this? And particularly, there is a hand up there. I think that is Councillor Birch, but I'll take any questions or comments from the executive first. No, none. Okay, Councillor Birch, would you like to come in then, please?
It is a question. It is a question. You're saying that this is replacing subparagraph A of the recommendation, or paragraph A of the recommendation. Am I right in thinking then that B, C, D and E remain? It's just an amendment to A rather than the whole recommendation.
That is correct, Councillor Birch.
Okay.
It incorporates A and B now.
I'm sorry, it incorporates A and B.
Okay.
Councillor Holway tells me. So it will replace A and B, but C, D and E will remain.
Okay, thank you. I wanted just to raise a question together with a comment, in that I'm just wondering whether, well, in view of the fact that the recommendation that comes before the executive had total cross-party support, and at the time it was it came forward, my understanding it was also had the support of Councillor Holway. I'm just wondering whether your committee would perhaps consider deferring consideration of this recommendation pending a discussion between the lead executive member and members of the Task and Finish group. I think, bearing in mind that this was only issued 10 minutes before the meeting, I think it would be advantageous for this to be discussed with the Task and Finish group, and then following that discussion, you then decide how to take it forward. I think that would help in a harmonious relationship between the executive and the overview and scrutiny.
Councillor Birch, I think that is an excellent suggestion, and all my executive members are nodding, so we're happy to do that. We will defer this item once again and give you a chance to look at this in more detail. Are you content with that?
Yes, can I just repeat the wording then that I would suggest is that the executive defer consideration of the recommendation pending a discussion between the lead executive member and members of the Task and Finish group. Thank you.
Councillor Birch, I'll take your recommendation. I'm not sure that you are allowed to make recommendations to the executive like that, but
Can I propose that then, please? Councillor McKay still wants to say something. Councillor McKay, have we answered your question now?
Pretty much. I don't. An awful lot of echo. I don't know why. In the light of what John's just said, Councillor Birch, that my question is answered. I just want to clarify that we're only talking about recommendations A and B not being considered at the moment. Is that correct? And the rest of it will be considered now?
No, we're going to defer the whole lot and they can all come back together.
Okay, I suppose my next question will be, what are the timescales associated with this? Because this has been going on for a while now.
It'll come back to the next executive meeting, Councillor McKay. It has been going on for a while, but I think it's better to get it right than to get it wrong and pass it. So I think Councillor Birch made a very sensible suggestion and we've accepted his suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
No, we don't need to vote. Well, do we want to vote on this recommendation? Yes, I think just for clarity, we'd better vote on the new recommendation to defer it.
Thank you, Leader. Deferral is unanimously agreed.
Thank you. Thank you. So, item 12 is exclusion of the public and press, but I think that Councillor Bastone is going to introduce the Plymouth and South Devon Freeport update before we move into part.
You know the recommendations that.
Please carry on.
Sorry, I'll start again. I want to introduce this item in the public session. It is an exempt report because it contains details of public sector investment for the Freeport, which is confidential at this time. But the Freeport proposal more generally is not. And I'm delighted in having the opportunity to talk about it and the potential benefits it would bring to the regional economy. The Freeport seeks to create 3 tax sites at Langage, Sherford and South Yard in Plymouth, as well as custom sites at Sherford and Langage. The tax and customs rules provide direct financial benefit to the businesses that locate in the Freeport, accelerating uptake. Furthermore, the Freeport would get £25 million in government seed funding, which would be matched by the public or private sector. It would be spent on an innovation hub in South Yard and infrastructure and land at Langage and Sherford. This will make the sites market ready for uptake by businesses. It is a potent mix of benefits and is designed to stimulate key sectors of the market to build and occupy premises and create high-value jobs. The key sectors targeted are marine, defence, manufacturing and low carbon. The vision for the Freeport is not one of high-volume, low-value containerised goods, but of high-tech manufacturing, defence, logistics and innovation. If the Freeport bid is successful, it will see the creation of 3,500 jobs and over £280 million in investment by the private and public sectors. Langage, which has been stalled for over 15 years, would be progressed. A critical piece of active travel infrastructure will be built at Deep Lane Junction, and the regional MOD capacity requirements secured. This project is entirely aligned to this council's corporate strategy, Better Lives for All, and in particular my own portfolio of thriving economy and our identified need to deliver strategic employment sites and critical infrastructure. The report before members today is an update report setting out the detail of the outlined business case, which we should discuss in closed session. But before that, I will say that also raises the issue of public sector investment. A future meeting will be called to discuss that investment, but I can say now that the Freeport does require investment from the public sector family, that is Plymouth City Council, Dem County Council and South Hams District Council, to make it work. The exact amount to be borrowed by this council remains to be determined, but it could be in the order of £5 million. It is clear then that this is a very important project of significant scale, both financially and economically, and I hope all members will give it serious consideration now and in future informal briefings, reports and decisions. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Bastone. Now, Councillor Baldry.
As in the open session, I'll be saying more in the closed session, Leader. I think this report is just for noting. It is an excellent report. It is well presented. It is well written, and it has helped our understanding of the situation. But as an aside to that, Leader, I was surprised, maybe disappointed, that we issued a news release on what was at that time a report which is only a private report for members only. We have not in the past, as far as I'm aware, ever issued a news release on something which was in part 2.
Councillor Bastone. Yes, do you want to reply to that? Chief Executive will reply to you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Councillor Baldry is absolutely correct. The matter was drawn to our attention, and I'm confident that steps have been put in place to ensure that won't happen in the future. It was an error to have issued an advance press release on a private and confidential report. Clearly, not all elements of the report are confidential. The specific elements that are covered in paras 3.7 to 3.10 and 3.16. Other aspects, of course, are not. But anyway, apologies for the confusion. I think we have addressed the issue. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bates. Councillor Bastone.
In defence of the press release, I would say the information contained within that press release is what I put in the public sector now, so it's no different, you know. It didn't include anything that was confidential. I understand it was probably a timing issue. It would have been better if it had been sent out after this meeting, but was my understanding.
Right, thank you. So, for further discussion of this report, I think we had better move into part 2. So